Yes, welcome back, everybody, to Leading Our Own Way. Can't believe it. We're at episode 3. I'm super excited. But before I introduce Andrew, I just want to quickly mention my episode 1, Jake Ward, aka the Aussie arm wrestler. Please go back and follow and watch that episode if you missed it. Heartwarming, inspiring story about him and his family, what he's doing in his career-wise, and how he changed his life and how he's just inspired a lot of people, especially around Australia. Please go back and watch that episode or listen to it on Apple and Spotify. Last week we had Mr. Don Johnson from A Certain Ratio, another good friend of mine. I'm so lucky to know, a few of these people who are coming onto the podcast. I have to really say a massive thank you, because if it wasn't for them, it wouldn't have been. They wouldn't have sparked the other people that have reached out wanting to share their stories that you will see in the coming weeks. There's a few of them I've known for a very long time, and I'm lucky enough to hear and be a part of their journey just from the sideline. Watching how these people have created their own path has just absolutely been phenomenal. But Mr. DJ Don Johnson, I learned a lot from him. I always do, on or off camera. That's an insightful conversation, and we learn a little bit about how he created his own way of becoming a drummer in a very well-known band from Manchester, where I'm from. Anyway, please go back and follow that as well. Just a quick note, please go to www.leadingourownway.com. On a regular basis, I always put little snippets, what you won't see anywhere else on social media, pictures and images of the guests that might not appear on their own social networks as well. I try and do something a little bit unique, so please go and visit the website. I'm enjoying building that as well. But today's guest, a friend I've known since around 2008, from a young lad. I knew his stepfather, who will also be appearing on the podcast much, much later on, in quite a few months, actually. He grew up in the Bronx, in a small little apartment in the Bronx, and went to one of the most prestigious universities in the world based on his skills. He is a writer. He's an author of a new novel called Victim. I wish I had it here on the shelf. You will see it on the shelf very soon when I get it. It's not available here in Australia just yet. He explains his journey writing that. He also explains his journey of going to one of the most prestigious universities, like I mentioned, and working for one of the most famous newspapers in the world. He now resides in Miami, Florida, with his beautiful family, yet to meet them, of course. And he talks about his journeys, his ups and downs, how he fitted in at the university, coming from the Bronx, a completely different world. And he goes on to discuss some of the mental health dilemmas that he encountered going through that. But then, just a powerful story, and certainly how he's led this journey for such a long time. And I've watched from the side, and it's just been the perfect timing to get him onto the podcast. So please enjoy his story. Give it a listen, give it a follow, give it a subscribe, whatever you guys do and whatever you guys are comfortable. But nevertheless, please take something from it. I'm sure you will, and enjoy Andrew's story. Watch the intro. We'll be back in 21 seconds. Enjoy, everybody, and have a great week. Welcome to Leading Our Own Way. I'm your host, Andrew White, and this is the podcast that unveils captivating narratives of resilience and personal triumph. This podcast is for anyone seeking inspiration and insights on overcoming life's challenges. Follow and subscribe, and then we can lead together forever. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Leading Our Own Way. I'm super excited. We've got an amazing guest here today joining us all the way from Florida. I'm really excited. We're a few episodes now into the series, and I'm just getting used to it. I'm new to all of this, and I get nervous. I get weirded out. I forget what I want to say. But we're the 3rd episode in, and I want to welcome our next guest, Mr. Andrew Boryga. How are we today, mate?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
No, you, mate, massive thank you to you. And I wanted to get you on here because since we met around 2000, God, I forget the year, 2008, I've always loved your story and I've watched it grow, and I was lucky enough to be at the side. But that's not for me to say. I know you, but everyone, all these guests who are watching, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're at in your life right now.
All right. So I'm a writer, and my first novel, Victim, is coming out. My debut novel. It's
Very
coming out
excited.
in March in the U.S. Doubleday Books is the publisher, and so it's a really exciting time. It's a book I've worked on for 10 years. And before that, I did a lot of writing for various news outlets, the New York Times, the Atlantic, New Yorker. So writer is probably the best, best and easiest way to describe it. It's been what I've been up to as long as Andy's known me, which is since I was a kid. So it's been
Yeah.
quite
I
some
think I
time.
met you as what, 16-year-old? Something like
Yeah,
that?
I was about 16. Yeah, something like that. That was about the time when I started writing too. So
Yeah, I knew about the novel a long time ago. I was like, it's going to be about us, isn't it, Andrew?
yeah, you were always like, oh, write me in the novel. Like, all right, man. Relax.
That's not going to sell. But this one is definitely going to. And I obviously the book isn't available yet, so I would have loved to it to have been on the shelf, but it will be on the shelf as soon as it's out. But I do have a picture of Andrew's novel here. You've obviously just seen it, but I had to get it in a frame because you're part of the show now. But just tell a little bit else about yourself and what you're doing at the moment, Andrew.
So yeah, I mean, in addition to the novel, also a father of two.
Yes.
Currently live in Miami, Florida. I grew up in the Bronx, which is
Hmm.
where Andy first met me. And yeah, man, just living the good life right now. You know,
Yes,
living
you
my
are.
dream and raising kids.
And,
It's all pretty good right now.
and your beautiful wife, Marcella, as well.
Yes, yes, married to my beautiful wife Marcella. And yeah, man, no, things are good.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait. I love telling the story, but I convinced Andrew to come to visit me in Australia, and he was having a few drinks online. We're having a good chat, and I said, "I dare
Yeah.
you to book a flight to Australia," and he did. But we've been to many countries together before. I've been to New York quite a lot, visited him. Like he said, I stayed in the Bronx, apartment sat his little poodle. I was this dude walking around the Bronx with a little, not a poodle.
Yes, you were.
What was
It was
the
a
what
it
was the
was a it was a Maltese poodle. Yeah, that's fair to
yeah.
say. He was about 10 pounds, so yeah.
He was tiny, and I'm this dude
Yeah.
walking around
Yeah.
the Bronx. But we won't say what I was wearing on my head one of the times. A shower
Oh
cap. I
yeah,
just
yeah.
did it.
You gotta show the picture. You gotta show the picture.
Oh, I should have printed that one. Yeah.
You should
Oh
have.
well.
You should have.
Well, we've touched briefly on our relationship, but and you did bring up when we first met and your
Yeah.
writing journey started. Let's go back. The format of the podcast is kind of where we go back so we can paint the journey and hopefully, people can be inspired by your journey, which there's no doubt. But let's go back and just paint the picture to the viewers of your childhood, maybe growing up in the Bronx before you get into your writing journey.
Yeah, grew up in the Bronx. Grew up with my single mom and my sisters, and we had it was challenging at times, but I personally really love my childhood. I love growing up in the Bronx. I lived in the same building basically until I was about 25. So
Mhm.
since I was a little baby, everybody in that building knew me, and so there was a lot of love, a lot of community there. And yeah, I would say about 16, I you know, for I said I used to say I wanted to be an engineer before I became a writer,
Mhm.
before I started saying I want to be a writer, and that was purely because I had a friend of mine who in my elementary school whose dad was an engineer, and he was the only kid that I knew with like a legitimate house. Everyone else lived in apartments. You know what I mean? It's New York City, it's the Bronx.
Mhm.
So I equated the fact that his dad was an engineer to they had a house, and I was like, I want a house. I'm gonna be an engineer, And
Mhm.
I went on all these college visits, my sophomore year of high school, which is about like yeah, about 16 or so. And I met with these deans, like the dean of engineering. I was a very ambitious kid, and I was like, I'm gonna meet with these deans and impress them and show them how, how ready I am to be an engineer. And it was during these meetings where they broke out the syllabus, and it would show me that like I had to take chemistry and physics and all these courses that like I had zero interest in and that I was never good at in school. Like writing was the only thing that really ever came natural to me. So
Yeah.
basically I abandoned my dream of I didn't really have a dream of being an engineer, but I abandoned the idea of being an engineer and committed like wholeheartedly to writing at that point. So
Yeah. And you just prior to that, though, I remember having a discussion. I obviously felt that love in that community, in that building, apartment building that we
Yeah,
grew up
yeah,
on. What I think it was like around 199th Street and Jerome Avenue. You know,
yeah,
not the
yeah,
end of
yeah,
the Bronx line, but it was not far off the end of the Bronx line. Is that right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
And you had two younger sisters, single mum.
Hmm.
You play this down, and I understand because you're probably only different. But you had a lot of responsibilities. You looked after your two. I mean, how much younger are your twin sisters? What, 4 or 5 years old?
They're 5 years younger than me. Yeah,
Yeah.
5 years younger than me. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I've got two children 5 years apart as well, and I can
yeah,
see the difference in the age. So briefly just mention about those type of responsibilities.
yeah. I think because basically from age 6 or 7, or five to seven, somewhere around there, yeah, I had to basically help out around the house,
Hmm.
and that involved babysitting my sisters when I was younger. There was a period where I went to parent teacher conferences with them and I was like 10 years old or something like that. So which is kind of ridiculous looking back. I don't know how they even let that happen. But yeah, like it wasn't something that I don't know, there was a need, and I just kind of stepped up to it, and it felt natural. I think I've always been a pretty responsible person, and perhaps that shaped me to
Yep.
be that way. But looking back on it, like it's something that I really value as an experience, because it always made me responsible for myself too, and my own goals and my dreams, and just to like go after them.
Yep.
Having those kind of adult level responsibilities, I guess younger than most people do, but it was actually a good thing for me.
See how he plays it down. But um, you did. You play it down, man.
I mean,
That's tough.
it is tough, but like I'm not the kind of person to like, I don't know, dwell on it too much. Like I think it just is what it is. Like I think I think part of it is because the community that I grew up in, yeah, I had a single mom, and yeah, I had to help out around the house and stuff, but like
Hmm.
I knew some people who had it way worse than I did. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And that always sticks with me, because it's like there were kids whose moms just like weren't around, or like didn't pay them the attention that my mom paid me, or have the interest in me that my mom had in me, or had other serious like issues in their household that like
Hmm.
for all its faults or whatever, or things that were lacking, like we had a loving household, and so I grew up always feeling quite fortunate, even despite the fact that I had these sort of responsibilities and things like that. So I guess it's hard for me to like feel too bad for
Yeah.
myself,
No,
because I look back and I'm like, nah, I know
you
people
had
who
a
had
great
it
childhood,
worse.
and yeah,
Yeah, I
and
had
you
a
had a
good childhood. I had a good
like you say,
childhood.
there's a lot of love there, and your mum
Yeah,
is
yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
beautiful.
And and like, yeah, I didn't have my father around, but I had godfather, I had like uncles, I had people who, I think I always say like one of the best things about, not having like my own father around as much, as that I kind of was able to create this amalgamations of different fathers in my community and through family and stuff. So I was, wasn't necessarily feeling like there was a hole as much. I was
Yep.
lucky in that sense. I did have a lot of people to kind of fill that in for me,
Yep.
thankfully.
So you got just touching about the dad thing. Now you grew up in the Bronx, small apartment. I mean, it's fairly big. Well, to me, it's a big apartment, but it's 2 bedrooms. It does get quite tight over a long period of time. It's just your mum and your sisters. Now you're a father of two, happily married,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I know you had a beautiful childhood. And I grew up as just me and my mum in the house and my gran, and I didn't have that father figure until a little bit later. And I look back now and go, how much I probably did miss it, even though I didn't know any different. So for
Yeah. Yeah.
you, now you're a dad of two. How? I mean, yeah. How does that play out? Do you realize now what was missing? Is there some? You know what I mean? Like I reflect on how I can
Um,
be a dad.
yeah, yeah. No, I think for the biggest thing is I take the job very serious. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I really love being a dad, and I, and I'm really intentional, and I try to spend as much time as I can with my kids. And like I chose, I make decisions, based
Mhm.
on what's going to allow me to spend the most time with them, and
Yeah.
to be there for them. And so, I think I basically, sort of I think because I know what it's like to not have a dad, like it just makes me want to be like an even better one to my kids, and also to, you know, never have them feel lacking or feel like they're don't, you know what I mean? Like just have them feel comfortable and feel secure.
Mhm.
So it's honestly been really, really great, man. Like I've loved being a dad. It's been, and it's been creatively, it's been super helpful for me too, believe it or not. I know it's like
Yeah.
it seems like an odd thing because it does take time away from my creative work, and it takes time away from my personal time,
Of course.
but it also like enriches my life so much, and therefore like the little time that I do have to do my own creative work like feels so much more powerful in a lot of ways. So
Yeah.
it's been the coolest thing, man. Honestly, I love being a dad.
And we're always getting it wrong, right? And that's the beautiful
Yeah,
part of
yeah,
leading our own way. I'm
yeah,
definitely leading
yeah,
my own way in regards of being a dad, because I'm getting this wrong. And sometimes I think, I don't want to do this, but I don't want them to remember that I didn't want to do this. And,
yeah.
I'm tackling myself as a child because, I was growing up with no siblings, and I
Right.
did play on my own. And sometimes I did play with my friends, I don't know. It's just a weird one. So my energy. I did. I grew up so probably selfish to a certain. I look back now and go, I was pretty selfish, but not in a bad way, not in an obnoxious way. I was just,
Yeah.
children are selfish. I know they're the most present people on the planet, but yeah, I second guess myself as a dad for sure. And I still probably would have done that if I did grow up with a dad in my family, because my dad's a really nice guy. I get along with him really, really well. No issues
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But but I feel there was probably where the dad wakes up in the house and all of that. There was a hole, of course, but that's nobody's fault. That doesn't mean everyone has to be together forever. But yeah, anyway, but no, it's beautiful, man. I love the way you said that. It's such a beautiful way of saying it, and yeah, we're always learning in
Well,
that regard as dads.
one thing that might help you too, and I remind myself is for me the bar is quite low. you know, like I'm here. You know what I mean? Like I'm here, so I'm already like doing a lot better. So like,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, not
No,
that I hope I'm doing a good job, but
you're doing a great
I
job.
mean, my kids are I'm sure they're gonna have some trauma or something for me later on in life, and I'll
Oh,
be like,
we're
hey, I
screwing up.
mean, yeah,
Yeah,
we're gonna mess them up. It's fine, but I'll be like, yeah,
we're
at
screwing
least
them
I'm
up
here.
somehow.
At least I'm here, man.
That's it.
I'm doing
That's
better.
how.
So
That's it. Absolutely. No, it's beautiful, man. I love it. Okay, so you're in your sophomore year at high school. For those who don't know what sophomore is, that's your second year of high school. Am I correct in that?
right,
Before,
yeah,
you,
that's correct. Yeah, yeah,
you that you mentioned before, that's when you started your writing journey, but you wanted to be that engineer. How
yeah,
I know what life is like in the Bronx. I've been to your place numerous times, and I know the
yeah,
lifestyles
yeah,
people lead, as beautiful the love in the community really is. I
yeah,
know the lifestyles engineers live. I've got plenty of friends who are engineers, but also the
yeah,
life that you guys were leading.
yeah,
How
yeah.
did that cross reference to you being an engineer, living in the apartment? I know we've touched on this briefly. What about that? I mean, that, I suppose, bringing up the comparisons,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's like I said, the only reason I really wanted to be one is because the kid that I knew at a house was an engineer, or his dad was an engineer. So it was very, it was very clear that the whole idea originated from a standpoint of trying to make more money or have like a bigger place or something like that, which
Mm-hmm.
I didn't connect that probably at the time, but looking back, that's it's pretty obvious that was a big part in it because I didn't really even know what an engineer did. And I didn't really care. I was just like, I'm gonna get a job that makes pretty good money, and like we're gonna move things up. You know what I mean? We're gonna like
So
just kind
you were
of
driven
elevate
by
our
the fancy
situation.
things. Sorry, I cut you off
Not
there.
not necessarily the fancy things. I just like just a house seemed cool. I was like, it'd be nice to have a house. I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't seem that fancy, in retrospect, but it was just. Yeah, just have some more space. Space is something that I always really wanted. Like you said, I shared my room with my sisters, and before my sisters were born, we had a 1 bedroom apartment. So I didn't
Mm.
really have my own room, honestly, until I was like a freshman in college, which is, so I was
Yeah.
like 18. That was like really the first time I had like my own space. And
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I probably just wanted, you know, some space of my own, but yeah.
So what was that crossover leaving the engineer idea and back to
Yeah.
writing then? What was that clicking moment to go, I actually don't want to be an engineer. Writing's my
Well,
jam.
yeah. Yeah, just when I realized what that actually entailed, you know what I mean? When I was like, oh, I have to do science and math. Like I never liked those courses. And
Mm.
so, writing was something that always came natural to me, and it was something that my teachers would always tell my mom, and hey, your son's a good writer, and I always I loved reading. We'd go to Barnes and Nobles on the weekend all the time, and I just go and like read books in there. Um, so once I realized that like the thing that was gonna get me money, or like this house or whatever that I was interested in, wasn't gonna work out, I was like, well, then I might as well enjoy what I'm doing.
Mm.
I think that
100%.
my um, my goals for a career have always been to enjoy what it is I'm doing and feel passionate about it. You know, and so writing was like, if it came, not that it came easy to me because I did have to work at it, but it was something that I would have done even if I did become an engineer. I still would have probably written stuff on the side just because I always liked writing, and I was always felt that I was pretty good at it.
Mm. Yeah. And you mentioned your English teacher said that you were pretty good as a writer.
Yeah.
Where did that statement then take the next journey before going to university? Because I think you mentioned a while ago, I
Yeah.
remember you're living in the Bronx, but you're going to these fancy schools. Just
Yeah, man, I got lucky. I mean, yeah, so I had this one teacher, Miss Nagrin, who's great. She might even watch this. Hopefully she does,
oh.
but she's awesome. She was my she actually met me. I got a scholarship to go to my Catholic high school in the
Mhm.
Bronx. Before that, I went to public schools, and they weren't the greatest. And then I got this, sponsorship to go to a nicer Catholic school in the North Bronx. And Miss Nagrin was the first teacher. They had like some summer enrichment program for kids who were sponsor students. And
Mm.
she was the teacher. She met me there, and we had probably some simple journal entry exercises and things like that. But from the very beginning, she was like, "Oh, you're a writer. You're going to be a writer." She would always tell me that. And I believe I had her my sophomore year, or actually my junior year. She was my teacher, and she told me about this journalism program in Princeton for high school students.
Mhm.
And Princeton, for listeners who don't know, is it's an Ivy League school in the U.S. It's probably one of the top three in the entire country, and
Amazing.
so very, very elite, very, very difficult, to get into. And this program, same way, what I mean. It was
Mhm.
about 20 kids, but like a lot of people applied, and there was multiple rounds. And so anyway, she was the one who told me about this program and encouraged me to apply. And up until that point, I had kind of been interested in journalism, but only because it was the only sort of writing that I had any awareness of that you could make money from.
Mhm.
Not like become rich, but literally just like, make enough money to pay your bills and live a decent lifestyle. I was sort of interested in journalism because it seemed like that was a possibility. And so, after her suggestion, I decided to apply to this program, and I got in.
Yeah.
And that was a huge, huge moment for my career.
Yeah. So you've still got what, another year and a half, 2-ish years before leaving high school.
Yeah.
You're on a 2-year journey, and then does that obviously prepares you really well for the next part of your life. Where does that take you then?
So after high school,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I was accepted my senior year to Cornell University, which is another top school in the U.S., another
Mm.
Ivy League school. So yeah, that was a huge like
Yeah,
social jump, to go from the
yeah.
Bronx to like Cornell, even though they're really not that far away. It's 4 hours away, which is like,
Mhm.
not that hard, not that far, but in my it very well should have been about a million miles. You know, it felt like that to me,
Yeah.
socially, and just, you know, it was a very, very, very different place from like my neighborhood in the Bronx, you know.
How different? What type of people were you hanging out with, or not even hanging out with? Maybe a part of, and the community's like.
I mean, you know, it's a very elite school. I mean, the school when I was going was like 60 grand a year, US dollars. So,
Mhm.
you know, now it's probably 100 grand or something like that.
Yep.
So just really wealthy, rich kids. I had the kid next door to me was like the son of a Saudi oil baron who literally didn't go to class and would just knock on my door and just be like, "Oh, can you tell me, you know, can you recommend me some novels to read?" And I'd be like, "Yo, don't you have class?" You know, like he'd be in his robe, you know what I mean? And so,
What, a fancy
um,
robe?
yeah, like, you know, yeah, he had like a robe and slippers, and he'd just knock on my door and be like, "Oh, what novel should I read next?" And I was like, "Yo, Muhammad, you don't have class, bro? Like, what are you doing?" You know what I mean? He didn't care because he already had a job lined up, you know.
Yeah.
And I
Why am I
had
thinking of Fresh Prince here? I feel like I'm listening.
kind of, yeah, it was kind of like Fresh Prince, you know. It was kind of, I always liked that show, but yeah, it was kind of like Fresh Prince. It was just like I was, you know, this kid from like the hood dropped into this like very, you know, elite place, and
Mhm.
so it was very hard to get my bearings, you know. And you know that at first I think there was a bit of mutual like discomfort. Like I was uncomfortable around them, and they were probably uncomfortable around me because
Mhm.
I don't know, I just came off differently. I just felt everything was different. My jokes were different, like the sense of humor, like cultural references. You know, I knew so much about like hip hop and rap and like urban culture, and they were more like, you know, they were traveling to these foreign countries and understanding of fancy.
Mhm.
I hadn't even had like sushi when I got there. You know what I mean? Like I was just like, I didn't even know what that was, or like Indian food. You know, like so they were just like things that they were dropping. I was like, what are you talking about? You know,
And how long did
yeah.
it take you to get used to that type of life, or at least, I don't know, blend?
Yeah.
I mean, would you ever blend? I don't know. What?
No, you know, I tried to blend at first, and that was honestly what made it harder because it was so obvious that I couldn't hang. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
socially, we weren't at the same level, you know. Like
Hmm.
I just not that they were better than me, but that they had just like we just had totally different social upbringings and community
Yeah.
upbringings, and so like I would try to fake it, but it'd be really obvious. Like this, what are you talking about? You know.
Yeah. So you're
So
losing your sense of your own
yeah,
or
and then I
identity
lost
then.
I lost a sense of myself too. It's like, well, who am I here? You know, and so it took about good 2.5 years, man. Like my first year, I seriously considered I was putting in the paperwork to drop out. I mean, I told
Wow.
numerous professors I'm out of here. I'm going back to the Bronx, and I'm gonna go to a local school and be with my friends and be back in my neighborhood where I felt comfortable. You know, run back to my comfort zone.
Where before we go back to how that before we enter the discussion of where you turn that around, where
Yeah,
did that 2.5 years take you mentally though, or yeah,
yeah.
mentally and emotionally? Where did that take you?
Yeah, it was hard, man. That was honestly, I was depressed, you know. That was the first time, you know, it's funny you talk about my childhood, but I was never depressed in my childhood. I didn't
No,
really know what depression was, to be honest.
no,
And then
yeah,
that was the first time that I was really depressed,
yeah,
because I didn't know I had lost my sense of self. You know, I felt secure in the Bronx. I still do. Like I
yeah,
know that neighborhood. I know everybody there. I don't feel there's nothing wrong with it, you know.
hmm,
And but out there it was like a foreign land, and so yeah, it was a depression, you know. For the first time I went to therapy. I mean, I never had access to therapy before, but that, you know, in this
yeah,
fancy school you get free therapy. So
yeah. Wow.
but even going to therapy was a whole thing for me because I didn't know anybody in my family who went to therapy. You know,
Yeah,
that was like you didn't do that. Like you just kind of manned up. You know, like there was no
yeah,
therapy. You know,
yeah,
so like even just stepping into that place was a whole um, ordeal for me. So you know, there was just a lot of growth and like inner um, well, growth came later, but a lot of just like inner turmoil and just like uncertainty, and you know, so it was it was probably the darkest point in my life, those first year and a half or so. Yeah.
Did your academics scores drop because of it?
Oh
Or
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd said I was gonna drop out, but I nearly flunked out. To be quite honest, my first semester, I was taking 4 classes. I think I passed 2 of them. I had to
wow.
drop another one. But basically, after my first year, I was there on a scholarship, and there after that first year, I was kind of like in danger of losing that scholarship because I was not doing so well. Like I mentioned the social climate, but academically as well,
Mm,
it was extremely difficult for me. I came from my high school in the Bronx and I thought I was hot shit. And, you know, I was like
yeah.
number 3 in the class. And then I won the math award. And then I got to Cornell and it's like I couldn't pass math, man. Like no matter how much I tried, I failed like 2 or 3 classes in math. And so academically, I felt really unprepared. So yeah, no, grades wise, that didn't turn around until end of sophomore year, when I finally started to kind of get a hang of things, and I was able to take more English classes, more writing classes, because that was really the only place where I felt comfortable at all, in
Mm,
that school in the beginning was in the writing course, because I was like, I would look around and be like, all right, I can hang with these kids now, because I'm a
mm.
writer, I could write, but everything else, I felt like I didn't know where I fit in.
It goes to show, though, the state of mind, how it affects what you actually were probably good at in order to get there. Because anyone that doesn't understand the scholarship system, you got there, not poor, full of love, but you didn't have
Yeah,
60
yeah. No,
grand
I
a year.
was. Yeah, no, I
So
was poor. We were poor. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So, these kids are there. If they fail, that's okay. Oh, that, we can
yeah,
all get the
yeah,
money and
yeah.
we'll pay for another year, especially, at Cornell. But you can't. You've got there based on your academic, your brain, the what you've produced at high school. So, and all of a sudden you are the opposite to what you were in high school. You're flunking. So sophomore year, you change it around, and you start to fit in, let's say, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
But was that academically and socially as well?
Yeah, so really what happened is that I tried to transfer my sophomore year.
Ah,
I tried to transfer out of school and transfer to Columbia University, which is
oh,
another great school, but it's in New
yeah,
York City.
yeah.
And I was like, all right, like because I had some counseling from mentors of mine at the school. I think one of the great things about Cornell is that the professors are very they're very caring, especially, I was a Latino student. There's not a lot of Latino students, and there's not a lot of Latino professors either. So, like,
Mm.
it's kind of this small community. They look out for you. And so a bunch of them had heard, like, hey, this kid's really struggling. He's thinking about leaving. And one of them pulled me aside, who's actually a very well-known writer named Ernesto Quinones, who's now like, I'm going to do an event with him for my book,
Oh,
in March.
amazing.
So it's crazy how this came full circle.
Yeah.
But I was just a fan of his at that time, and he basically pulled me into his office and he was like you'd be dumb to leave the school, like what are you gonna do? You're gonna go back home and hang out with your friends in the Bronx? Like what do you're gonna get in trouble? Like what are you gonna do? You're gonna give this opportunity up? And he was right. I was just not thinking it through, and so I was like, well, all right, I'm gonna if I don't want to stay here, I'll try to go to the grade school that's in the city, and that way I'll still be around my friends and my community, and that'll be like the best balance for me. So I did. I applied to transfer and everything, and I didn't get in. And so that was the end of my sophomore year where I got rejected, and that was kind of the moment I was like, you know what? Like I'm here and I'm going to accept it for better or worse. I'm going to make the best of this experience. And, something about that just like lifted a lot of pressure and weight off of me. And when I came my junior year, I was just like, I'm gonna be myself, because like
Mm.
me trying to pretend to be like these kids, it's not working. Me trying to run away from here, it's not really working. So
Yeah.
I'm here. I might as well just be me, and things got a lot better after that.
Yeah, I love that. But it's not about not thinking it through. I think when you're down, you're in darkness.
Yeah,
Your sympathetic system kicks in. You fight and flight, and you wanna escape, right? You
yeah,
want to take your body and mind out of that darkness, and one way of doing it is leaving. But you led your way, so to speak, to and you needed that voice from somebody you probably admired and clearly still do today, and
yeah,
you found your way to reflect and go, I deserve to be here. I was the one that got me here, as obviously with the love and support of your family too, but you got there, and you just be yourself. And I think that's the key message to everybody, though, is just be yourself and have faith in your purpose.
yeah.
And writing is definitely apart from being a dad, but writing is definitely your purpose, man. It really, really is.
Yeah.
All right, so you turn it around. I was going to ask about what did somebody say, but you've answered that, so that's awesome. Okay, so finish off the journey at Cornell. Then you're coming towards, you've got the next year and a half, 2 years at school. How did that change for you?
Yeah, so by the time I was a sophomore, junior, I was taking the classes. You have to do your like introductory courses and stuff, and I got those out the way. And so by the time I'm sophomore, junior, I'm really focusing on what has become my new passion and obsession, which is creative writing, fiction writing. So I did a bunch of like intro to creative writing courses, and then I just started working on these short stories and submitting them to contests on campus and outside of campus. And I started winning. I won like 3 or 4 awards on campus that were very highly regarded for writers on campus. And so, it just kept giving me these big confidence boosts whenever I'd win one of those. And I'd be like, okay, like I'm good at this, like this is and it's something I enjoy, I enjoy fiction writing. I enjoy I realized I enjoyed even more than journalism, which I was doing at the time as well. I was doing both at the time, but like I fiction, I just like something about like taking all my life experiences and the people that I knew and came across and like creating these characters and like putting them in situations. It just felt so fun and rich to me. And so, I think a lot of my, the confidence that I developed and the self-acceptance came in tandem with the fact that I was also growing as a writer and becoming more confident in my abilities as a writer as well. So by the end of my senior year, I won, it's called the Cornell University Undergraduate Artist of the Year Award, which was like a huge deal. Yeah. And, it was like the first time a writer had won in like 10 years. So I was just,
that department would have loved you.
Yeah, no, the department was thrilled. It had been a long time because it usually goes to like a painter or like an architect or like, a musical artist or somebody on campus. And it was like, it went to a writer. So it was like a huge deal. And I was just so proud, man. I was just like, all right, so I left campus on like a high. I left campus like I did it, I beat the odds here, and I came out feeling like I knew what you said, like what my purpose is. My purpose is to write.
That's your why, isn't it? From flunking, from failing almost halfway through your academic program of 4 years, you go to winning. You won several awards. How many awards did you win altogether before you won the Artist of the Year?
It was probably like 3 or 4 awards. Okay, so basically, I won like all the awards that you could win as an undergraduate for writing. I won them. So I was just like, I cleaned up.
So what do you cleaned up. So what do you think that transition between that area of flunking to almost failing to win awards? Because my background is teaching, and I always say there's a clicking moment. I believe that's your clicking moment. But what is that transition between flunking and almost failing to winning the most righteous, the best award?
I mean, I think it probably looks different for everybody. But for me, it was just coming into my own as a writer and just like having professors. The creative writing courses were really the few places where professors were really encouraging of me, and saying, and like we have workshops and they read my stuff and leave these great notes for me, and my peers in the workshops would read the stories and give me great feedback. And so it was like, I was hearing a lot of encouragement from people, and I think that fed into me to take it seriously. I did take it seriously. I started waking up at like 5 a.m. and I would write from like 5 to 7 or 8 before my first class and just like work on short stories and like read
Yeah.
books and, all outside of whatever my normal duties of school life
Yeah.
were. Because I also had jobs. I had like 3 jobs on campus, so I was like I was doing a lot of stuff, but I realized that people were telling me I had a talent for this, and I believed them. And then I was just like, I'm gonna take this serious. I'm gonna really see this out, see how it goes.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
in your mind, you're in a university, you're about to graduate. You have a plan for the future. You must have had.
yeah,
I assume you have a plan in the future. What was your plan in that moment? Did you have a target, an idea?
yeah, yeah. So, like I said, I came out. I felt like the man again. Like I was in high school. I left, and I was like, I'm the man. And then I
Yeah.
got got my butt handed to me my first couple years, and it was sort of the same thing leaving Cornell. I had won all these awards, and people were, I had this goal already of like, for whatever reason, I chose the age 27, that I was supposed to publish a debut novel by the age 27, and so I left Cornell, and I had gotten accepted into a master's in fine arts MFA program in fiction writing at the University of Miami. And so basically, right after Cornell, I went straight to Miami to do this not undergraduate program in
Hmm.
writing. And it's a 2 to 3 year program. It's fully funded. And the whole
Yeah.
goal is that you're supposed to like write your book or your poetry book or whatever it is that you're working on. And so um, I figured I was going to go there. I was already on such a roll, finish my book, and I'd be 25, 26 at that point, sell it, and then be a famous writer. I was like, that was the game plan. And
You've made it. You're doing this
yeah,
regardless. It's going to happen. It's going to fall on your
yeah, I
lap.
was like,
Yeah.
it's gonna go. Everything was going well at Cornell by the time I left, and I was like, I'm gonna coast into here too, and it's not what happened.
So, what were the ups and downs? If we had a graph, I'm assuming you're on the way down now,
Yeah,
mentally,
yeah. So
career
Cornell,
wise.
I'm like
Yeah.
hi, and then like I get to Miami and immediately like crash. Yeah.
So, how long did you? Well, you crashed. What happened there in Miami for you then?
Yeah, it was a mix of things. I think, you know, one, I was 22 years old, and I just graduated college. So
Mm,
by the time you go to college, you're already, 16 years in school, So
mm,
like
mm.
I just needed a break from school, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how intensive the graduate program would be, which looking back is kind of silly of me not to realize that, but I didn't. And so there was that, and there was also, because I had such high expectations of myself and what people were telling me back at Cornell, I kind of like believed in the hype a little bit too much, and because of
Yeah.
that, I felt really creatively blocked because I felt like I wasn't like back when I was a sophomore, I had no expectations about where my writing was going to take me because I was just writing for fun.
Yeah.
And the fact that awards started coming after that was just kind of like that happened, but I wasn't aiming for that stuff. It just happened.
Yeah.
And so now that I was aiming for it and I wanted it so much, um, it was hard to create because I was not creating with like joy in mind. I was creating with like an outcome in mind, with a goal, with an award or a
Mm.
publication, or a book deal in mind. And so because of that, the writing, like it was hard. For the
Mm.
first time ever, it was hard to actually write stories or write a novel draft. I was second guessing myself, and so there was that, and I was also like out of my element again.
Mhm.
I had been sent to Florida a couple, like a few times as a kid. In the summer, my mom, growing up in the Bronx, she would always be afraid that I'm going to get in trouble, like with too much idle time. So she sent me away. Like I go to Puerto Rico or like I go to Florida. And so I had some dealings with Miami, but I had never lived there before. I didn't know
Yeah.
how to drive. I was a super city kid. I grew up across the street from the 4 train, so I had no driver's license. And
This is the Fresh Prince. You are getting sent
yeah,
away.
yeah, I know. It happened again, you know. So
Yeah.
so I get to Miami and it's like Miami is a super car culture. There's a train, but it goes up and down. It doesn't go left to right. You know, it's a useless
Oh,
train.
okay. Yeah.
So so you know, all I really had was school, and then I couldn't really get around, and I didn't really, you know, I had friends from school, but you know, it
Mm.
was a very sheltered like life. And so yeah, I couldn't hack it, man. Like I lasted 5, 6 months and then I dropped out. You know, I was just like, this is not for me.
Wow. So you dropped out of the course. That, I mean, that must have been a big step. Was it? I mean, well, was it easy for you to go, you know what? I am signing these papers. I've been through this before. I'm going to just drop out.
Yeah.
Or was it a long process in
Um,
order?
it happened fairly quickly.
Hmm.
It wasn't easy because I felt like I was letting a lot of people down in the
Yeah.
program. You know,
Hmm.
like they had taken a chance on me and they had accepted me and given me funding to go there. And so that was probably the hardest part, feeling like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
I'm kind of just bailing on these people. But I knew that, like, again, I had gotten depressed. You know, I
Yeah.
was seeing the signs. At this point, I'm like, all right, now I'm getting depressed again. I'm smoking
Yeah.
cigarettes. I'm like doing stuff that like I don't normally do. And I was like, nah, this is just not a good place for me. I need to get out of here. And so it wasn't as nerve-wracking because I knew that I had to do it. I
Yeah.
just felt a little bit embarrassed, I guess, for what people might think, but I still did it anyway.
For sure, I get that. Did you go any worse than cigarettes? Did it go deeper than that?
No, 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 no. I never like really, no, I
Hmm.
never messed with any drugs or anything like that. But you know, for me, cigarettes alone was already bad. You know, like I had
Yeah, it was
people in
only
my
bad. Yeah.
family die from lung cancer. It's like I knew where cigarettes leads you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was just already like, I mean, I was drinking a lot, but that's, you know, I was 22, so
Typical.
everyone drinks a lot when you're 22.
Yeah. Yeah. We've all been there, right? I
Yeah,
guess.
a lot of Four
So,
Locos, you know.
so we go. You go back to the Bronx, back to your
Yeah,
apartment on Jerome,
yeah,
and what happens for you there? Because I think we missed a part out. I don't know if we mentioned
yeah,
it, but when you went to Cornell, there was a
yeah,
reason
yeah,
why you went to Cornell and how you got there. Just
yeah.
briefly mention how you got to
Yeah, I
Cornell
know.
because
I
you didn't
realized
just.
we didn't talk about it, but yeah, so it goes back to this Princeton program. There, I'm a junior in high school, introduced to journalism. I came back home, started working for my local paper in the Bronx.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a senior in high school, and I applied for this scholarship when I at that point in time, which was part of the New York Times, the New York Times scholarship. It's
Yeah.
for underprivileged students in the city, basically, who have survived tough circumstances to do well academically. You know,
Yeah. Wow.
which was my background, and so and you know, I didn't even really apply for the money, to be honest. I applied because I was already like I was 18, 17, 18, and I was like, all right, I'm going to be a journalist. I'm going to be a writer. And part of the scholarship, you get an internship with the New York Times if you win. And
Yeah.
that's what I
Wow.
really wanted, you know, because
Yeah.
I knew that, you know, if they let me in the building, I was going to make sure I figured out a way to stay there and, you know,
Amazing.
and make it work. And that's what I
Hmm.
did. So I won the scholarship. And when I was 18, before I even started Cornell, I was interning at the New York Times, and I was actually
Yeah.
writing blog posts for them. I did well in that first internship, made connections, and I came back 2 more years after that.
Yeah.
So by the time I was a junior in college, I had already had quite a few published articles with the New York Times and was freelancing for them. And um, so that all plays into this Miami thing because when I dropped out, I went back to New York and they had an
Mm.
opening at the New York Times for a news assistant position, which is not a glamorous position at all. You're basically running errands and you know, helping people with little small duties. But as part of the job, when you have downtime, they let you write and they let you pitch things. So because I had the connections that I had, I was able to get that job after leaving Miami. So I quit my graduate program, went back to New York, and started working for the New York Times like a month later.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So I actually spent the summer 2010 at your place, and I think were you off gallivanting journalism for New York Times that summer as well?
Yeah. When you were there was a piece that was like my first big feature, and they kept holding it and holding it. And I remember we were like, I kept calling the editor, and I was like, yo, when you gonna run my story? You're gonna run my story? And then I think you were there when it finally came out in the paper, and that was like my first big, because I had written these little tiny stories, and that was like my first big story in the paper. And so that was a good moment. Yeah.
I've got a newspaper here with one of your articles in the New York Times, just so you know. I should have brought that out. I should have put that on the display. They wouldn't have seen it anyway. It's too small.
Yeah,
the print. Fine. Okay, so you come back and let's go back. You're back from Miami. You're back working. You're freelancing for the New York Times. That pressure, going back to that pressure of trying to publish by 27. You're a young bloke, but years are getting closer. I know how long you've been writing the novel for.
Right.
What's that journey there then?
Yeah, so I was kind of trying to do a bit of dancing at that point. I was, focusing on being, pitching and trying to write as much as I can for the New York Times. And also on the side, trying to work on this novel, which was like still just as stuck as it was before. I think I don't really know what it was at that point that was stopping me or blocking me, but I wrote so many drafts and shared with people and tried to get an agent, and it just kind of like wasn't going anywhere. And the journalism thing started kind of taking off a little bit better, and I was publishing pretty regularly, and so I sort of started to lean back into journalism, a bit more. I've always kind of like done this thing where I'm focusing on journalism and then putting creative writing on the back burner, or I'm focusing on creative writing and putting journalism on the back burner. So at that point, I sort of just like shifted towards journalism and focused on trying to just publish in different places and make connections with editors. And so, I was at the Times for about a year, ended up leaving that and getting like a very easy sort of like communications day job. And I wrote on the side for a lot of publications and just built up my clips at that point. And around 2016, this day job I had was a remote job. And so I moved back to Miami because at that point I had been dating my girlfriend at the time, and we got engaged, and she's from Miami, and we would visit all the time. And every time I'd come, I'd be like, like it's so beautiful here, and like so much cheaper, and like life is just better than New York, which is so hard to live in at that point. I've been there for so long already. We were just like, why don't we move to Miami? And so we just did. We just packed up and moved to Miami. Say it again.
You get the sun.
Yeah, and the sun, the beach. I mean, yeah, it was just beautiful. We would visit, and I'd be like, every time, like, why don't we just live here? And then so we just did it. And it was there when I came back, through just pure luck, I went to a book reading, and ran into the director of that MFA program. And I saw her from across the room, and I was like, oh man, like she probably hates me, but
because you left the course.
Yeah, because I left the program. I was like, let me go say hi to her though, and she was so happy to see me, which like blew my mind. And again, just pure luck. Somebody had left the program recently too, and so they had an open spot, and she was just like, do you want your spot back? And I was like,
the lines align, the stars align.
Yeah, man. And, and so I said, yeah, because at that point I had like 3 or 4 years to think about me leaving the program, and realizing that, man, that was a pretty good opportunity. And I just kind of like threw it away. And I kind of wish that I would have had it again, because, I had some time in the real world at that point. I'd been 3 or 4 years working outside of school, and now at that point, then I was like, all right, now I feel ready to have like 2 or 3 years where I'm only focusing on this, and I know what I want to do now. And so I ended up going back, and that was like the best thing I did, because, I was a whole different student at that point.
Well, you've grown, haven't you? You've matured, you've grown, you've got a little bit more life experience.
Yeah.
We bypassed the New York Times thing though, because New York Times is, if not the most well-known newspapers on the planet, and you just swiped over it and I left there after a year. No, Andrew, that bit is not good enough. Um, you're at New York Times. Nobody just
Yeah,
leaves the New York Times,
I know.
right? But I'm
Yeah.
guessing you said you
No,
wanted to be in
no.
the building. You're in the building, and you choose
Yeah,
to leave the building. They didn't get rid of you. You chose to leave the building.
yeah.
Just that time you were there, I'm guessing it's pretty hard to knock into New York Times. What was your journey in there? Do they make you carry coffee, do photocopying? You're not writing. What you're in
Yeah,
there? What's going
basically.
on?
Yeah,
Oh,
basically.
okay.
I was
Wow,
doing all that stuff, like
I
it's
didn't
a
expect that.
very it was no, it's like my actual day job title
Yeah,
was news assistant, and you're just an assistant basically.
yeah,
It has nothing to do with writing. I would have to like transcribe the lotto numbers
yeah.
and yeah, just make coffee for people. There were reporters who'd be like, "Can you print this out for me?" And I'd be like, "You know how to use a printer? Why are you asking me?" So I don't know. Like there was just things that they were asking me to do, and I was just like, okay.
You're proving yourself. You're having to prove yourself, I guess. But
Yeah, 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 but
you're not looking for that, are you? You're wanting to
no,
get into the
yeah. I
GC
mean,
stuff.
I think, I guess I had this like chip on my shoulder because I had already been writing there for 3 years. Like they knew I
Mm,
could write, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Everybody knew, and I had great relationships with editors, but so it was fine. I was willing to stick it out, as long as I saw this like this better thing at the end of the
yeah,
tunnel.
yeah. Of
But
course.
I was there about a year, and I started to realize that like, and people were kind of telling me that they weren't really planning on moving me away from just doing the assistant job, and like opportunities would come up and I'd apply and I'd never get it, and I
Yeah.
would never hear back why. And so, these things just kept happening over and over. And my hours were terrible. Like they would just tell me like week to week what my schedule was. So I could never plan anything in my life.
Yeah.
It was hard to have a relationship with my girlfriend at the time. And
Yeah.
so it was just like after a while I just started to feel that even though yeah, it's the New York Times, like I'll probably do the writing that I really want to do if I leave. And I talked to some people, and they kind of told me the same thing. Some elder statesmen there who were trying to look out for me and just make sure that I wasn't wasting my time, because they knew that I did have a talent. And so they basically told me like, you'd probably be better off going to write for another paper and maybe coming back or something like that
Yeah. Okay.
when you have more under your belt, because the Times is the place. I think while it was cool that I jumped straight there, because I was in there so young, I think a lot of people always saw me as a kid,
Yeah.
whereas other people, you get to the Times after you've put in years, at local papers and smaller papers and making a name for yourself. And so when you get to the Times, you already have a reputation, and they don't, and I think that I was always just seen as like the scholarship kid who got in, and he's a nice kid, good kid, but like, there wasn't like, I didn't see myself getting these like opportunities that I thought I deserved. So
You might have got it at 30, but you wanted it earlier, basically.
maybe, yeah, I mean, yeah, I had friends who stuck it out, and they ended up doing, getting what they wanted. And so,
Yeah.
but maybe I wasn't patient. I don't know, but
No.
um,
You,
I look back and I don't regret it, to be honest. It was the best thing I did. Just,
yeah. Great.
yeah, yeah.
Well, like what you said before, it's not that you manifested it, but you got to see your old mentor in Miami, and you got to be able to connect the jigsaw that you did break, and you got
Yeah.
to be able to go and fulfill that. So
Yeah.
you graduated, you went into journalism once you left the University of Miami. It was University of Miami, wasn't it?
It was University of Miami. Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
And you started to work with two papers there, the South Florida Sun. I'm not saying that right. Well, I don't know how to pronounce the next name. The South Florida Sun Sentinel.
Sun Sentinel. Yeah.
Sentinel, yeah. I've never heard that in
Yeah.
a newspaper before.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the South and the Daily. This is a weird one as well. The Daily Beast.
The Daily Beast. Yeah, yeah.
Are these two big papers? I've never been to Miami,
Well,
so I don't know.
yeah. The South Florida Sun Sentinel is a big paper in South Florida. They're the big regional paper here. They cover 3 counties, and so they're a big paper for this region. And then excuse me, the Daily Beast is a national paper, or they're online only. They don't have a physical product, but they're a national outlet. So yeah.
So whilst you're working here, I'm guessing, because I know how long you've been writing The Victim for, did this overlap?
Yeah, so I was writing early versions of Victim at that point. Again, I was writing it throughout this whole time. So since
Mm.
college, it's, again, I had this idea of 27, but now I'm already 28, 29. And every year that passes by, I'm just like, I'm a failure. I'm still not publishing this book. I'm never going to publish this
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
Just writing different versions of it. And so, yeah, I was still writing while working for those two publications, but it was really difficult to juggle that because being a daily reporter is very, very time consuming. I was
Yeah.
writing anywhere from like 3 to 6, 7 stories a week when I was working at those three places. A lot of long nights, a lot of
Mm.
like driving all over town, phone calls late into the night, like, research. So it's very time consuming. And, so my fiction suffered as a result. But again, that dream was always like still there. I've always wanted to publish a novel. So I was always kind of just tinkering at it whenever I could, but it was,
Yeah.
nothing was really, really clicking, all that well until, honestly, until my son was born, which was July 2020, right in the middle of COVID. That was when uh, things with the book really started to kind of come together.
Why did you think it started to come then? Was it because your mind went somewhere else, so it became free to write in a free
Yeah,
manner, and you weren't so
yeah,
like focused on? Because I
yeah,
can relate to that. I feel like this is kind of working out now because I'm relaxed, and I've got a day job,
yeah,
but I can focus on this in a free way,
yeah.
my way, not anybody else's way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that was exactly it, man. It was just I for so long I was 30 years old by that point.
Hmm.
So for 10 years I had only focused on being a writer and like getting the right accolades and the right attention and
Hmm.
the right Twitter following and all this crap
Yeah,
and just I focused so intensely on all that stuff
yeah. So
and
the
all of a
energy's not going
sudden
on the writing, is it?
yeah, right. The energy is
Maybe.
focused on, I mean, it was, but the writing was in service of these like larger goals of being known,
Mm.
and then all of a sudden I have a kid and it's like, there's a human being I'm responsible for now,
Yeah, yeah.
like, so it just totally reorients your life, and all that other crap didn't matter anymore. Like I was just like, first of all, I don't have time for it because
Yeah.
I'm a working journalist. My wife is an architect. She's also quite busy, and now we have a son, and
Hmm.
so like I said from the beginning, being a dad was always important to me, and so now I'm a dad. I'm gonna focus on that too. So as a result of that, like a lot of noise just was cut out, and I had less time to write, but the time I did have to write, I I was like, I'm not gonna waste this like worrying about where I am in this little game in my head. I'm just gonna have fun again, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
beautiful.
just gonna write and have fun again like I used to when I was in college and I had zero expectations.
Yeah.
And as soon as I did that and that switch changed, like everything happened pretty fast after that. It was like within 2 years I had a book deal, and yeah, and I credit a lot to my son and then later my daughter, who was born like right after I signed my book deal. She was born, and that was like the best thing that ever happened to my writing.
Oh, that's amazing. It just
Yeah,
goes to show, though, when passion, it's not that the passion wasn't there when you started. Obviously, there was an
yeah,
element of it, but there was a lot of these external pressures that came with it in your, maybe not external pressures, own internal pressure from your own head. And,
yeah,
well, I'm sure the external part came into it too. But it just
yeah,
goes to show, though, and I think that's translates to people who are maybe struggling at work or struggling in their daily not understanding their purpose. On my other podcast, I talk about purpose, and I think when passion can come into it in a free manner, in a free way, things start to light up. You start to see things happening in your own life, and just just coming the maybe it's manifestation. I don't know, and I don't mean like you write $1 million check and then it happens, and put it on a vision board and it means it's going to happen. You're working in those small, simple steps to get where you want. You've got that purpose, you've got that energy, and then you're working on small, simple steps, and things come to you. Rather than putting 80% into something, you put 1% into it and make it small, small habits and build up on a very, very slow way. I've noticed magical things tend to happen. I see that in your journey. You've pulled back a little bit, you go full throttle, but you pull back a little bit, and you're doing small, simple steps, and other things happen which are beautiful, and it just, I don't know, it shines light onto your other passion, your other purpose, and then look at it now. And I can only see how that, when that does come out, how it's going to blow up for you. You probably won't ever need to work again, but you will, because that's your thing and that's your purpose. That's your life. But honestly, I mean, that jokes aside, I think it's going to be from some of those quotes. I've actually got some quotes here for you, and I forgot to actually organize them and pull them out, but I did have them organized. I do have them down here somewhere. Give me a second, guys. I don't know why I didn't leave them out. I thought I did leave them out. Some of these quotes are magical. I've printed these too. Andrew Boryga is a new literary star. And that is Matt Johnson, author of Invisible.
Invisible Things. Yeah. He's a good guy.
Author of Invisible Things. Sorry. And Pym, P-Y-M.
P-Y-M, Pym. Great writer. He's somebody I studied with. Yeah, he's an awesome guy. Yeah.
And this one I really do like, and this was a recent one. I'll just hold it up to the screen so everyone can see. You get debuts this blazing once in a generation if you're lucky. Boryga is brilliant. A brilliant writer, a brilliant I can't even pronounce that word. Satirist. Okay.
Yeah.
And his voice could light up a city. What does that word mean, by the way? Satirist?
Just somebody who writes satire. It's fancy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not fancy, clearly. And his voice could light up a city. Look at that. I mean, and talk about that author. Who is that?
That's Juno Diaz. That's, probably my biggest literary hero. So I got to frame that one. That was a huge one. Yeah.
And so to get that sort of comment from somebody you admire.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
It was awesome, man. That was just like, I still remember the moment when I read the email where he sent that to me, and I was just like, I felt like I won the Pulitzer Prize, like the best writing award you can win in the U.S., basically. Yeah. And I felt like I won it at that moment. I was like, well, I'm done.
Did you send the book to him for him to read to get that given? How did he get to him?
So that was just like a really natural thing that happened. I have a Substack newsletter. I know you're on Substack. My Substack's called Dwell. And he followed my Substack, which I obviously saw because when that came through, I was like, holy shit, Juno Diaz is following my Substack. And I just emailed him to be like, yo, you're the man. Like, I can't believe you're following my Substack. And by the way, I have this book coming out. If you want to read it, it'd be an honor, And I didn't really want anything from him. I wasn't trying to like get a blurb. So those quotes are called blurbs. I wasn't trying to get one from him. I was just like, man, if you read this, I would be like, that'd be awesome. I just figured maybe he'd read it, maybe not. Even just like sending it to him was an accomplishment in itself for me.
Yeah.
And then he emailed me 2 days later with that blurb. And I was just like,
that's amazing, man. That is incredible.
It was incredible.
I read that on your social media, and I had to get it out to show everybody because I thought that was absolutely incredible. And I did know the word blurb, by the way. I did it for my book back here. And I'm not a writer. All right.
I know you're an author too. So
I am an author, but I'm not a writer. And there's I don't know. There's a difference.
So technically you're a writer. That's how it is. They go together.
No, I'm interviewing an author. I'm not an author. I did that because obviously I wanted to make people think differently about my passion, which is why I'm doing Leading Our Own Way, because I want some positive stories to be shared coming from triumph and adversity or ups and downs in life, because everyone has a graph and it's never a straight graph, right? It's always ups and downs. And I think every story is worth sharing, and every story is worth hearing. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, whether it hits 1 million people or whether it hits 10. I'm doing it because I enjoy hearing the stories and getting them out there. All right, so going back to your Miami thing very quickly though, because I do briefly want to come back to the victim and dates and when you release, and I'll
Yeah.
put everything in the show notes. I'd love
Yeah.
for everyone to reach out and buy a copy of The Victim, and it will appear on my bookshelf amongst the other books I'm reading, read
Awesome.
or reading at the moment. But because you're a fiction writer,
Yeah.
but you've also been you mentioned about the role being a journalist. What was the role that you always wanted though? Because you wanted to write novels since you were young and you had a target of 25, 27, but you also wanted to be a journalist at New York Times. So what was the actual real role that you always wanted?
It's just changed. Honestly, for a period, I really just wanted to be a journalist, and for a period, I really just want to be a novelist. And I think the novel writing won out. I think I've kind of gotten the journalism bug out of me. I still write. I'll probably still do some freelance stuff here and there, but and I enjoy that. But yeah, I have a total different feeling of satisfaction, like with this book. It's something that I'm proud of what I've written as a journalist, but I think I'm going to be proud of this for like a really long time.
Yeah,
Like this is something
absolutely.
that it's going to just like have a life of its own and be on shelves, and so and that's just cool as hell, man. That's just like I want to, if I can do that more, I'm going to do that more. So yeah, I think the novel writing went out.
Okay, so obviously the novel writing kind of won your heart. Where is it going to go for Andrew in the future? Because obviously the Victim book can stay on the shelves for a long time. Some of these books that I'm reading in the back, the authors are still promoting. And when I realized the date of release, that was years ago. So you
Yeah.
obviously can promote that for a very long time. I'm guessing that's going to be your journey for the majority of your time. But what does the future hold now for you? Where are you leading your way now then, Andrew?
Yeah. I'm actively trying to work on a second book.
Oh,
I got a decent draft together, but
ah,
promotional things for Victim started to pick up, and so
yep,
I've had to kind of put it aside for a little. But it's something I think about every day, and I'm taking
yep,
notes. And so basically, when things sort of calm down a little bit for me, and the book is out in March, and I have
yep.
done my events and things, and I have some time again. My plan is to get working on the second book because I'm excited about writing it.
All right, so can you give us something on this new book? Can you give us a little smink of something, like just something tiny,
Yeah,
Andrew? Come on, man.
yeah. It's gonna revolve around parenthood, around fatherhood.
Ah, I like it.
That's like a new. Obviously, I'm experiencing that right now, going through it
Yeah,
and learning every day. And so I
yeah.
want to write a fictional story around that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there isn't a lot of dad stories in fiction,
Mm,
and so that's basically my general goal right now, is to write a good dad fiction story.
I love it. We'll talk off air about me appearing in that one. No,
Yeah.
I'm only joking. Okay, so we have mentioned the Victim a couple of times, a lot. Just give us a bit of a rundown, so people go and press on the link and go and buy it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Give us a rundown of the Victim then.
Yeah,
Why? Well,
so
first of all, actually, why is it called the Victim?
yeah, so it's just Victim, just Victim.
My
And
apologies.
yeah, yeah,
Victim.
no, it's all good.
I
Yeah,
should know that.
man,
It's right there.
it's right there, but it's good. It's all good. But yeah. So why is it called Victim? It's a play on that word. I think we talked about my childhood, obviously, and I think from a young age, I've always I've always experienced trauma and hardships, but from a young age, I've always framed them as things to learn from and grow from. And it's very interesting that this culture we live in now, especially in online culture and these literary and media worlds that I swim in, there's a lot of, especially when you're like a writer of color or a person of color, there's sort of an insistence to like tell your trauma all the time, or like,
Yeah. Yeah.
perform it, I guess. And it's something that as a writer I would often encounter. And and it just kind of got irritating after a while, from editors and things like that. And it also made me realize that they, like, when they wanted diverse stories, or things that I had to say, they kind of just some often wanted me to tell a certain type of story.
Mhm.
And so over my time as a journalist, I would see this and pick up on it and have conversations with other people about this. and it made me want to, write a story where a character was going through the same thing, but rather than like complaining about it, he he saw it as an opportunity and tried to capitalize on it.
Mm.
So basically the protagonist in the novel realizes that people, these editors and literary establishments want him to tell his sort of trauma stories. So
Mm.
he leans into it and starts making things up and making them worse than they were, and
Mm.
basically, lying. And
Yeah.
as a result, gives them what they want, and his star begins to rise until he maybe gets a little too close to the sun
Yeah.
and falls
Wow.
down. So
Yeah, I like it.
so yeah, interesting. I think I think it's a commentary on where we are today as a society, but also there's a really good friendship story at the heart of it as well that I'm
Yeah.
really happy about.
Hmm.
These two kids who grew up in the Bronx and just took different paths in life, which one of which becoming a writer and one of the other one going to jail, and they sort of also reuniting through the course of this book, and how that friendship and those bonds actually helps kind of pulls the quote unquote famous one back down to
Yeah.
reality. So
Yeah.
so a lot of themes of things that I've been through and experienced and that I value, wrapped into what I hope is a fun, entertaining book. I try to make it. I had fun writing it, so
Yeah. I mean,
I
that's
hope
the
people
main
have fun
thing.
reading it. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, no, it has to come from you first. I've heard that with songwriters too. When they write a song for them and don't worry about so much the audience, not in a horrible way, but when they can just do it for themselves, they'll
yeah,
attract the right people that are going to read it or listen to it, right? And
yeah, for
I think
sure.
if that's the heart of your book and you've written it for you, people will see that beauty and they'll just want to read it because of its authenticity as well.
Hmm.
Going back to some of you, I see, I think I see it, and I might be wrong, but I've always kind of thought that about, maybe rap songs and they tell their story. Do you
Yeah.
think they've added layers to those events
Oh
in
yeah, yeah,
songs
yeah,
to
yeah.
make it
Oh yeah,
more? I don't know. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, for
yeah,
sure,
yeah,
but
yeah.
do you see it a lot being a writer then?
Yeah, you see it in hip hop all the time, where you have these guys who like lean into the,
Yeah.
thug life, and then
Yes.
somebody does a story about them, and they like went to private schools and they were never lived that life.
Is that Eight
And
Mile?
no, I think as far as I'm aware, what's his name, Eminem actually did have it hard, but
No,
but
I know, but the character in Eight Mile was really a posh boy from a
oh.
private school.
Yes, right. Oh, right. The other guy. Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Like
the
that. Yeah,
battle. He
exactly.
played it like it was really,
Exactly.
really
Yeah.
bad. But he had a. I love
Exactly.
that
Yeah,
part
yeah,
of the
yeah,
storyline. He
yeah.
had a
You went
posh
to
name and he
private
went to
school. Yeah,
a
that was a
private
good
school. Yeah,
that was a great movie, man.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, totally. No, I love how you explained that. It was beautiful, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. I'm 100% going to be here on the shelves, but don't wait for it to appear. Get it out there, get it ordered, and we'll share the journey together. All right, so we know where the future lies for Andrew. You've got a beautiful family. I think you've led your way, man. I really do.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
your own
I guess
way,
I have. Yeah.
your way, and maybe it becomes a tradition of the podcast. You've clearly led your own way. You sit on the low chair very, very well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will be able to relate to your ups and downs. Maybe it'll reach more writers and inspiring writers, or maybe people can translate this story into their own journey, whether it is writing, whether it's engineering, maybe. I don't know. I'm only saying that because of your original journey, but
Just make sure you look at the course description.
yeah. Maybe it's those getting into teaching. I kind of went that way. I didn't want to teach and I put off, and then I did want to teach, and
Yeah.
you find your way, don't you? And I think, yeah, no, it's a beautiful story, and I've really enjoyed our friendship since we first met through
Likewise,
your
man.
stepdad, and we'll continue to be friends. We've been to England, Scotland, and Australia and America together. We've done all these things, and we've traveled the world to catch up with each other. I've always loved our connection, and I hope to see your beautiful family soon, live, not on FaceTime. But you're living a beautiful life, and I can't wait to see where it goes. And I've loved watching you from afar.
And thank you.
Even if we've not spoken to a few weeks or a few months, I've always kept an eye on you to make sure you're doing the right thing. Yeah, man, I just thank you so much for leading our own way.
Course.
Thank you for joining on my journey and my purpose. a lot of people will get a lot out of this, as well as the good storytelling. I think a lot of people will get some inspiration from the path of, adversity, broken home, the broken home, the being poor. Not.
Yeah.
I know you don't look at it like that, but people
Nah, but
will relate to that.
It's funny. I didn't think, I didn't know it was poor until I got to Cornell.
No. Well, I mean, everyone's poor.
I never thought of
to
it
them.
that way, but then I was like, oh,
Well, I think everyone,
you're rubbing
most-
shoulders with like the Shah of, some I don't even know where, and some guy, people driving these fancy cars, and I was like, we grew up differently.
I think most people that would go to Cornell are on a scholarship that would probably be the same situation. Even if they're not, even if they got a bit of money behind them, they'd still be poor to the hundreds of millionaire, billionaire people.
Yeah.
Once again, thank you for joining us on the Low Chair, the Leading Our Own Way podcast. To everybody else, I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Please share it. Please spread the love. If you know any writers, get it out there. Look at the Victim, the novel. I know there's not a there. It's like the Facebook when people use.
I know
it's
a lot of people have said that, and I'm like, I get it. It's maybe there should be a there. I don't know, but it's cool.
Because this creates conversation, and that's what it's all about. So
yeah, that's right.
Keep it as it's a conversation point, and people will go and buy it for that as well. Thank you again. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, man.
Everybody else, please enjoy, watch back and get some many lessons from this awesome, authentic person, Andrew Boryga, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you on the next episode of Leading Our Own Way next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening and watching Leading Our Own Way. So we can stay together forever and share more incredible journeys, please subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss next week's episode and what that amazing guest has to offer to the world. Please support Leading Our Own Way, and we'll get you on next week's episode.